HOA Karen band. War widows, old radio didn't know my uncle's a state senator. The cul-de-sac was silent, except for the faint hum of Mrs. Eleanor Grayson's ancient radio, its crackling tunes drifting like a ghost from her front porch. It was the kind of sound that could make you close your eyes and picture a different era. Big band music, soldiers coming home, love letters folded in pockets. But to Karen Whitaker, the HOA president, it was a violation, a blight on her vision of suburban perfection. I'm Marcus, a 32-year-old landscaper who just moved into my late grandmother's house on Willow Lane. I didn't expect to get sucked into a neighborhood war, but Karen made sure I did. That first week, I watched her strut down the street, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob bouncing like a warning flag. She'd slap violation notices on mailboxes for infractions as trivial as a slightly overgrown hedge or a basketball hoop left out overnight. But when she set her sights on Mrs. Grayson, a 78-year-old widow who'd lived on the block since the Korean War, I knew trouble was brewing. Mrs. Grayson's radio was her lifeline. Her husband, Tom, had bought it in 1952 before he shipped out to Korea. He never came back, but the radio did, packed with memories of their late-night dances in the living room. She played it every evening, sitting on her porch, her eyes distant but alive with something soft and sacred. The neighbors didn't mind. Most of us loved the nostalgic hum, but Karen. She called it noise pollution and sent Mrs. Grayson a notice demanding she stop playing it or face a $500 fine. I was trimming Mrs. Grayson's azaleas when I saw Karen march up her driveway, her heels clicking like a countdown. "Eleanor, this is your third warning," Karen said, her voice syrupy but sharp. "That relic is disturbing the peace. Turn it off, or I'll have it confiscated." Mrs. Grayson clutched the radio tighter, her knuckles white. "This was Tom's," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It's all I have left of him. You can't take it." Karen smirked, scribbling on her clipboard. "Rules are rules, Eleanor. If you can't comply, the HOA will handle it." I couldn't stay quiet. "Handle it," I said, stepping forward, shears still in hand. "It's a radio. Karen, not a jackhammer. Let her be." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this. Marcus, newcomers don't get to rewrite the bylaws." She turned on her heel and left, but I saw the glint in her eye. She wasn't done. The next week, the notices piled up. Karen cited Mrs. Grayson for everything: a chipped mailbox, a cracked garden gnome, even a bird feeder that was too colorful. It was harassment, plain and simple, but Karen had the HOA board in her pocket. Most of them were her friends, cowed by her relentless energy and her knack for digging up dirt. She'd once gotten a family fined $2,000 for an unapproved shed, then bragged about it at the annual barbecue. Mrs. Grayson started to shrink. She stopped sitting on her porch, and the radio went silent. I'd see her through her kitchen window, staring at the old Zenith like it was a coffin. I knocked on her door one evening, bringing her some of my grandmother's old recipe books to cheer her up. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know how to fight her. She's taken everything but my memories, and now she wants those too." I felt my jaw tighten. "We'll figure something out," I promised, though I had no idea how. Karen was a force of nature, a suburban dictator who thrived on control. But I wasn't about to let her break Mrs. Grayson. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. While mowing a neighbor's lawn, I met Javier, a quiet guy who'd lived on Willow Lane for a decade. He was a retired postal worker with a knack for fixing electronics, and he'd been watching Karen's reign of terror from the sidelines. "You know," he said, leaning on his rake, "I fixed that radio for Eleanor a few years back. It's not just a radio, it's a piece of history. Tom sent her letters from Korea, and she recorded herself reading them aloud on cassette to play through that thing. It's like he's still talking to her." I froze. She never told me that. Javier nodded. "She doesn't tell many people. But Karen's not just banning a radio, she's banning Tom's voice." That hit me like a punch. I started asking around, and the neighbors' stories poured out. Karen had fined a single mom for her kid's tricycle, forced a veteran to repaint his house because the shade of blue was non-compliant, and even reported a dog for barking too loudly during a thunderstorm. The cul-de-sac was a pressure cooker, and Mrs. Grayson's radio was just the latest spark. I decided to dig deeper. I spent nights poring over the HOA bylaws, looking for loopholes. They were airtight, written in legalese that made my head spin. But then I remembered something my mom used to say, when in doubt. Call Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray was my mother's brother, a state senator with a reputation for cutting through red tape. He wasn't the kind of guy who flaunted his power, but he had a way of making things happen. I hadn't talked to him in years, but I figured it was worth a shot. I called him and explained everything: Mrs. Grayson's radio, Karen's vendetta, the neighborhood's frustration. Ray listened quietly, then said, "Sounds like this Karen needs a reality check. Send me the bylaws and give me a few days." Meanwhile, Karen escalated. One morning, I woke to find a tow truck in Mrs. Grayson's driveway. Karen stood there, directing two men to load a pile of non-compliant items onto a trailer lawn chairs, a rusty watering can, and, at the top of the heap, Mrs. Grayson's radio. Mrs. Grayson ran out, her face pale. "You can't take it," she cried, trying to grab the radio. One of the men pushed her back, not hard, but enough to make her stumble. I sprinted over, catching her before she fell. "Karen, what the hell is this?" I shouted. She didn't even blink. Enforcing the rules. Marcus. Eleanor's had her chances. The neighbors started gathering, phones out, murmuring. Javier was there, his fist clenched. "You're a bully." "Karen," he said, "this isn't about rules, it's about you getting off on power." Karen's face reddened, but she doubled down. "If you don't like it, move. This neighborhood deserves better than junk like that." She pointed at the radio, now dangling precariously from the trailer's edge. That's when it happened, the moment everything snapped. Mrs. Grayson, tears streaming down her face, lunged for the radio. The trailer shifted, and the radio fell, smashing onto the pavement. The casing split, wires spilling out like guts. Mrs. Grayson dropped to her knees, sobbing, clutching the pieces. "Tom," she whispered. "Oh, Tom." The crowd went silent. Even Karen looked shaken, but she quickly recovered, muttering about consequences and walking away. I helped Mrs. Grayson to her feet, my blood boiling. The neighbors were done whispering. They were shouting now, demanding Karen step down, but she just waved them off, retreating to her McMansion. That night, I called Uncle Ray again. "It's worse." I said, "She broke the radio? Mrs. Grayson's a mess." Ray's voice was steel. "I've got something in motion. Meet me at the community center tomorrow." The next day, the cul-de-sac was buzzing. Ray had pulled strings to call an emergency HOA meeting, and he'd brought back up a lawyer friend who specialized in property law and a reporter from the local paper, eager for a juicy story. The community center was packed. Neighbors I'd never seen at meetings showed up, some holding signs that read, "Save Eleanor's radio," and "Down with Karen." Karen strutted in, oblivious to the storm brewing. She started the meeting with her usual spiel about maintaining property values, but Ray cut her off. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, standing, his senator's badge gleaming on his lapel. "I'm Ray Caldwell, state senator. I've reviewed your HOA bylaws, and they're a disgrace. You've been abusing your authority, harassing residents, and violating state regulations on HOA governance." Karen's mouth dropped open. "I'm just enforcing the rules." Ray held up a folder. "Rules you've twisted to suit your ego. I've got affidavits from 20 residents about your overreach. And this," he pulled out a photo of the smashed radio, "blown up to poster size? This is cruelty, plain and simple." The lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Patel, stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitaker, your actions violate multiple state laws, including harassment and property destruction. We're filing a formal complaint with the State Oversight Board, and we're seeking your removal as HOA president." The room erupted in cheers. Karen tried to argue, but the reporter was already scribbling, and neighbors were sharing videos of the radio incident online. Javier stood up, holding one of Mrs. Grayson's old cassettes. "This is what you destroyed," he said, his voice shaking. "Tom Grayson's letters, Eleanor's memories. You didn't just break a radio, you broke a widow's heart." Karen's face crumpled. She stammered. "I didn't know, but no one was listening." The vote to remove her was unanimous. By the end of the night, the HOA board was dissolved, and a new election was scheduled. Ray promised to oversee it to ensure fairness. Mrs. Grayson wasn't at the meeting, she was too shaken. But the next day, I brought her to Javier's garage, where he'd been working on something. He'd salvaged parts from the broken radio and built a new one, using the original speaker to preserve Tom's voice. When Mrs. Grayson heard the crackling cassette play her old recordings, she cried, but this time, they were tears of joy. Karen moved away a month later. Her house sold to a young couple who loved Mrs. Grayson's music. The cul-de-sac felt lighter, like a weight had lifted. I kept in touch with Uncle Ray, who made sure the new HOA board prioritized people over perfection. As for Mrs. Grayson, she's back on her porch every evening, the radio humming softly. The neighbors join her sometimes, bringing lemonade and stories, rebuilding what Karen tried to tear down. But the question lingers, where do you draw the line between rules and compassion? What would you have done, stood up to Karen, or stayed silent? Share your thoughts. We're listening.